Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of Lost in Possession podcast. It's a podcast about three football loving lads who go around and talk about football. What more do you want? So, as we begin, I will introduce myself and introduce my two fine friends on the screen here. So, I am Reese. I am an Arsenal fan, but I'm also a football fan in general. So, if I'm not at the Emirates one week, I will be down in the doldrums of Tin Shed Grounds another. So here's the platform for you guys. Who wants to take the first reign and introduce themselves?
Yeah, go on then. So I'm Jamie. I'm a Man City fan. Yes, I've lived in London all my life, but I am still a Man City fan, and I've been season ticket holder for 19 years now. Been at Main Road, now at the Etihad. I've seen us been relegated. I've seen us win the league. I've seen a fair bit, I'd say. George?
Yeah, over to me. So I'm Jordan. I'm a lifelong Chelsea fan, as you can see, repping the Chelsea yellow today. Again, lifelong fan, season ticket holder for 21 years. My first game was at 6. Been quite fortunate over the last 20 odd years. We've had a lot of success. Obviously, that could be coming to an end, as we'll get to later in the podcast. And also a former football referee. I'll get the dig in early, but of course, a lot better than some of the Premier League referees we see today. I think so. Moving swiftly into the debate. Obviously, the point of this podcast is we absolutely love football, and we could spend hours each day discussing the various topics and debates. And that is exactly where we begin with the Premier League title race. As we all know, hotting up after City's 0-0 yesterday at Palace. So I think a good starting point will be Jamie. Kick us off. How are you feeling about Man City's chances in this year Premier League title race?
Like I said at the start of the season to you, and you still didn't believe me, we're still going to win the league. And the reason for that is I just think we're a better overall team than everyone in the league. Now, form-wise, you have to look at Liverpool, but it all comes down to that one game at the Etihad, City versus Liverpool. With the 0-0 last night, we should have won. We had the better opportunities. I wouldn't say Palace played badly. They played really well, but we had the chances to win that game. So as I said to you two last night, I'm not nervous because it still means we are ahead of Liverpool, even with their game in hand, which is against Arsenal in midweek. Even if they go and win that, which I predict they will, it still comes down to just one fixture. And in the league, we've had quite a good record against them at the Etihad. Can I see them winning it? Liverpool, yes, but I still have got to back my team.
I think I agree with that. I think it's a big ask, and it does seem that, as is often the way, we are leading into just one big blockbuster, potentially league-defining match at the Etihad, which definitely gives you the advantage. I mean, Liverpool. It's in my nature as a Chelsea fan to potentially despise Liverpool, but I've got to say they have been, really, really impressive. The run of games they've put together. There was I think it was something ridiculous where this season they'd scored 2+ goals in about 15 games in a row at one point. And regardless of their kind of lack of squad depth or perceived lack of squad depth, they just keep delivering. So I think it's going to go down to the wire. And as you said, I think Etihad, that big game could be potentially one of the biggest of all time. Reece, I know you share a similar view on that.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the middle here. I was with Jamie. I believe City would win the league at the start of the season. And I believe that was, I'd say that'll still be the case, but I don't see them winning the Champions League as well. I think it's going to be one or the other there. But I think everyone had Liverpool written off at the start of the season. I believe I had them to finish 4th originally. No real additions in the summer. No real, I want to say strength in depth, but you looked at who if they was to lose Salah and Mane like they did for AFCON, who would they replace them with? And they've actually done that really well. They're scoring goals. They're winning the game they should be winning. And I think they'll win on Wednesday. as well. I think the momentum's with them, but I don't think City will be too bothered about the draw at Palace. I think a draw is still a draw, and I think City weren't too surprised with how Palace were going to play, and I think that they would have come in there actually happy to take the draw. And I think it comes down to the Etihad, and I think could be winner takes all. But I think City have enough to still push themselves over the line.
I think as well.
Yeah,
I was just going to say on that point, the way City were playing yesterday, Jamie, like, yes, you didn't win, but you were relentless at times. And as long as you're playing well, it's less of an issue. If you put in a weak performance and you get outplayed, dominated, I think that's more of a factor. But City yesterday, it felt like, if not when, or the other way around, when not if. I think it's going to go down to the wire. And just on that point, Reece, I think we've got to give a little shout out to Palace. I mean, the job Vieira's done, Arsenal legend, maybe a City legend at a push.
It was at City, so we can claim that.
Vieira to you both.
Not doing you any favours in the title race. But yeah, I think Palace have done a good job, and a lot of exciting young talent, Gallagher, Elise, really, really exciting times for Palace. In terms of, is there any hurdles? Obviously, we're looking at the fixtures for City and Liverpool. Any potential hurdles or red flags you can see coming?
I do feel like the Arsenal game tomorrow is massive. If it was at Liverpool, I'd be like, it's going to be about 4-0.
Yeah.
Because it's at the Emirates, I do feel like there's a bigger chance for a slip-up. Liverpool do probably have the harder run of fixtures compared to City. They've got to play United at home, Spurs at home. They've got Everton at home. I know Everton haven't been great, but it's a derby.
Yeah.
Everton don't win at Anfield, but a draw could still be something they could miraculously get with another City legend, just to wind you up, Jordan. Frank Lampard doing us a favour.
Having none of that.
But what I wanted to say about the Etihad fixture, a draw is good enough for City. That's what I think makes it harder for Liverpool, because they've got to come to City and they have to win. A draw does nothing for them. They're still behind us.
But could you ever see City? I can't see a Pep Guardiola side ever sitting back and going, a draw is good enough. So I think that's true, but maybe not a big factor. Liverpool will go to win the game. City, I believe, will also go to win the game. There won't be maybe a bit of late on potential time wasting, if you're 1-0 up, but I don't see, like that. I just can't see Pep playing for a draw.
No, he'll never play for a draw. That's something he'll never do. But there's sort of still game management he'll bring into that.
Yeah.
If it is, let's say 0-0, 89th minute, he's not going to throw on 3 strikers and then leave us defensively exposed. He's more likely to put on Fernandinho in the middle just to go, okay, a draw's now good enough. But the mindset from the start won't be a draw ever.
Yeah.
It just isn't in his way.
And on that game, obviously on the game this week, Arsenal Liverpool, I think with Arsenal's form, you're right. Normally you'd look at that fixture and go, 3-0 Liverpool win. But I think the way Arsenal have been playing, arguably in the form of their lives for the last probably few years, potentially in the league, they just keep winning. And it does seem at the minute that on their current form, hopefully it's not the Arsenal of old where they just collapse in the big games, but they could really give Liverpool a lot of issues later in the week. And Reece, I guess this moves us nicely on to Arsenal in general. I mean, I've heard it a lot this week, and you tend to hear it when Arsenal are on a good run of form. Socials are blowing up. Fans get potentially overhyped. I know a few boys in my office get a little bit overexcited with beating the likes of Burnley and Watford, relegation candidates. How do you view Arsenal's top 4 chances? Because it's looking pretty rosy at the minute.
Not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Arsenal are not going to get the top 4 from an Arsenal fan in the current position. Can we just clarify that?
Yep.
Currently 3 games in hand and a point
I mean,
clear of United at the moment.
That's bold. I mean, I don't even know where to begin, but elaborate. Tell us why, so please.
Absolutely. First things first, those 3 games in hand: Liverpool at home, Chelsea away, Spurs away. No, the record at all 3 of them, against all 3, is not that good.
No.
If you look at our results against the teams in the top 6, other than beating a very, very poor Spurs side on that day, I believe they've actually lost them all. They lost away to United, they've lost to City twice, they've lost to Chelsea at home. Granted, a couple of those games are very early on in the season, but it's still quite testing of that. Arsenal have won the games that they had to win, which is an improvement, because how many times would they lose to the Watfords away, to a last-minute goal, or they would...
Start of the season, Brentford.
Exactly.
Yeah, prime example.
They would lose those games, a few years ago. And I think that they've improved in that aspect. But I look at the squad and I think the fixture running is not nice. Other than those teams I've just said, they've still got Villa away on Saturday. They've still got to play a couple of the relegation sort of teams when they're fighting for their lives. For example, Everton, Leeds at home, Newcastle away. I think the fixtures are way too hard for them for a club. I don't think there are any players in that starting 11 that are actually over 30. I think Lacazette's probably the only one, Partey.
Yeah.
So I don't really see any experience to drive them through that. This isn't just being negative. It's how many times do you see a team of just 20-somethings, win a league?
I mean, there's the famous quote from, well, we know who, but, you don't win trophies with kids, I believe is the exact word for word.
Which is true, because I believe that United team did have a lot of experience in it.
Yeah. So with regards to the manager, obviously that's always a factor in a young squad. And my kind of view in the past has been, what can you expect from Arteta? It's his first job. That's a lot of pressure to have a young squad, admittedly out of Europe. So maybe a little bit of fixture pressure is alleviated. But what's your take on Arteta? Is he the man for the job?
Yeah, I believe so. Like, I think if you looked at me earlier in the season, when they lost that game away to Everton, that was a real low point. I didn't get how Everton, who were very, very shocking at the time, we went there and just couldn't do it. I know Damari's Gray's last minute winner was unstoppable, but to play that poorly, it was very much, where's the improvement in this team? But I looked at the running towards the end of last season, did very well, performed very well. And he did win an FA Cup. Whether people like to admit that or not, that was very convincing performance as well. So he's got it in his locker, and I think he's learned from some very good managers and influences. And I think his man management has been superb. And I think in an era of football where everyone chops and changes managers at the drop of a hat, I think by having this vision and this project in place with him at the helm is a good sign. It's convincing. It's clear that there's faith in him. And I think that runs down the rest of the pitch. The players start to believe in him. The players like him. And he's getting rid of the players that perhaps are upsetting the apple cart a little bit. So I think he's good. I think he's excellent manager, and I don't think the job's too big for him. I think everyone's putting pressure on him, even if he does finish 4th. That's too much pressure. Any improvement on last season is an improvement, and it's where he goes from there. If we sit here this time next year and we're 7th, then you could argue that there hasn't been an improvement. But I think,
I do feel like having no Europe has been a big factor. It's something that you've seen other teams do before. It's sort of like in Chelsea, they won the Champions League, but they finished 10th. Or it was one of the seasons.
I think it was sixth or so. The first.
You
time.
had no European football, and then you just focus on the league.
Yeah.
And you're just like, we've got a week's rest between each game. Win. And I think it might have been like Conte's first season or something along them lines. I can't remember which season it was, but you had no European football, so you were just winning games and didn't have to worry about the midweek game. And I think Arteta has benefited greatly through that. But then you've also got to look at the other teams in the top 4 race. What you're just saying about Arteta, he's got board backing, people trust him, he's building it up. You've got the opposite contrast in United, Now, I cannot say with a bigger smile on my face how great it is to watch them go down the pan. It's brilliant.
The noisy neighbours.
Yeah, they're now the noisy neighbours. We're the ones on top. But with them, you just see such lack of this season. There's no vision for it. It's the whole team looks disjointed, and then you've got a manager there who hasn't really ever done anything managerial wise. His better work has come from behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Why is he manager of Man United? I just won't know. There might be people who disagree.
Short-term solution.
Yeah, it's a short-term solution, but then I'm sure they could have found someone else.
If everyone knows it's short-term, it's going to be hard to.
Yeah.
Take it.
Why are you going to work for a manager who's going to leave in a few months?
Yeah, I mean,
because even if you pretend to have him long term, but you've agreed with him behind the scenes, you're only here for 6 months, but don't tell anyone else.
I would argue so obvious. Job, though. I think he's still putting himself out there to get the job. I think he's made the team more organised. In fact, just speaking of it now, they have just had a shot on target. Oblak just saved it.
It's a big improvement.
They've made him more organised. He's definitely made him more organised. I think his man management with players has been good. With Lingard, he's been absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
I think he's managed Ronaldo very well. I just think he's definitely got them a little bit more structured. I think under Ollie, they would say they'd go and beat City at the Etihad. Then they would go and lose at home to whoever.
Yeah.
Whereas I think here he's got a little bit more order. Yeah, they're not winning 4-0. They're not winning 5-0. But they're grinding out results, which I think is often more important. And that's why I had them to finish 4th originally.
Yeah, I think, the Spurs game was obviously a good example of that. Do I think they were at the best against Spurs? No. But you've got, every so often, we know the quality of Ronaldo. That's a big factor. Having Ronaldo, who at some point can just turn it on and get a world-class hat-trick, that's something that I don't think Arsenal have. And maybe that is a case to say Man United could bridge that gap.
Yeah, with Arsenal, obviously their main attackers are Smith Rowe, Saka, and I can't pronounce his name, Odegaard.
Yeah.
Is that the best way of saying his name?
Yeah,
but them three behind are just the sort of, they have no fear, which I think is what works for them.
It's also a lack of expectation to some degree, or a lack of pressure. They're not in Europe. Yeah. There's no real,
so young as well, yeah.
And I will make this proposition as well. Other than the Wolves game the other week, when in the season have they been 1-0 down and turned it round?
Who, Arsenal?
Arsenal.
Yeah, Arsenal. Other than Wolves,
when
have they been 1-0 down and turned the game around?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly can't remember. And I've kind of raised it myself many times. And it does with Arsenal, it does tend to show in the bigger games. I do think a little bit of inexperience, maybe some degree to Arteta, but there is a little bit of naivety. You do cut, we know prime example that everyone will talk about is the Arsenal Man City game. Arsenal put in one of the best performances, in a 60-minute period that they've probably done in the last 5 to 10 years. And yet you see that, the Xhaka, the foul to give away the pen, then the red card. Yes, maybe City got a little bit fortunate, but the naivety of that squad to do that and throw away potentially one of their biggest wins, in years, just shows that little lack of experience, in my opinion. And I think, again, that's a weakness as to why maybe Arsenal might just drop off as we kind of see the season out.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. I mean, the City game, I think people were a bit under the illusion here. Yeah, we played well, but let's be honest, City were far superior. The possession was higher. Everything was much more in their favour. We gave them a game, but, we still don't have that out-and-out striker. I think Lacazette fits the system well, so we don't need an out-and-out striker. But I think we just lack that ruthlessness. I can't see us... when we go 1-0 down, I just see the heads drop. Other than Wolves, which was very, very, deserved in the end, I just don't see it. And if you're going to allow that mentality, if we go 1 behind tomorrow, we go 1 behind away to Spurs, are they going to win? And I honestly can't recall, other than that Wolves game, when they went 1-0 down this season and turned it round. I haven't seen it. I don't think they've even done it. And I don't even think people have been talking about that. but most of that is because they're a young squad.
Yeah,
They'll
I think
learn.
the lack of experience is a little bit of a factor.
Yeah, they're young, and it will take time, but they'll learn from that. They've already improved on last year massively.
Yeah.
So it's only up from here. But the fans are putting unnecessary pressure on them already. That's the problem.
However, if we're talking about top four, is there anyone else who can sneak in there, or is it simply just Arsenal, United? Because you've got Spurs have got a few games in hand, but they're still, well, they haven't got a game in hand on Arsenal, and they're 6 games behind. 6 points behind, sorry. Then you've got Wolves, West Ham. They're 3 games ahead, and they're 3 points behind. Is there any chance for them 3? Because I don't think Wolves are. Wolves, I think, have been brilliant defensively this season and just haven't scored enough. But I don't see them putting on a run where they'll go and win the next 6 games and then put them in proper contention. Wolves, West Ham, I think. Yeah, go on. What are you going to say about Wolves?
No, I was just going to say Wolves. I think they can get top 4? Probably not. But they have shown moments throughout the season. And even I remember very, very early on, I think there was a period, probably within the first 5 games in the season, where Wolves would dominate games. Their XG, I think, was up. I believe their XG early on in the season was up there, in the top 5. And the way they play, some of the experience, Ruben Neves, I think is one of the most underrated players in the Prem. They have got ability. You look through the squad, even the keeper. You've got Cody as centre back. You've got Neves in the middle, Podence, Jimenez. There's a lot of quality in Wolves, and I do think there's something to be said. Top 4, yes, bit of a push, but I can see Wolves with a little bit more consistency really pushing those European spots again. But back to the point, do I think they can push for top 4 this season? I think it's a little bit, a bit of a bridge too far.
Yeah, fair. No, I agree with that.
And probably looking at those 2 Arsenal games, really, that's probably what's cost them completely for that.
Yeah, I think they could have wobbled there. I believe Spurs are in with a shout. I think Conte's given them the kick up the backside that they need, and I think they'll definitely be up there. I don't believe West Ham will. I think there's too much hype around them. I think if you look at David Moyes as a manager in history, he's never won a major trophy because every time he gets to that finish line, he can't quite deliver. Yeah. I'm not sure what it is, but I think also he's made West Ham a better team. I think he was the right appointment for them. So they need to understand that it should be a disappointment to not finish 4th. I think there's a lot of things they need to improve on to perhaps get over the line, but they shouldn't be too disappointed for where they are. But I think
with West Ham, I've just looked at their fixtures, and their fixture list is very tough. They've got Spurs away, City at home, Arsenal at home, Chelsea away, and then they've even got Everton, Brentford, Burnley, Norwich, all fighting relegation.
Yeah.
Every one of them teams have got something kind of to play for. I think apart from the last game of the season against Brighton, they've got Chelsea who probably have the least to play for.
Yeah.
Because they've pretty much got top 3. But then that's technically a London derby, although there's so many London derbies, it's not proper.
Even with nothing to play for, it'll be a tough game, tough atmosphere. So I think West Ham, with looking at those fixtures, I think it's just not quite going to happen. I think Europa, obviously, that Europa would still arguably be a success for them.
Yeah, that's what they'd expected for. That's what they've hoped for at the start of the season.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's all they can ask for, really. I don't think they can expect much more.
If they win Europa, though, they get the full spot, don't they?
No, they get a 5th spot. So the full spot got scrapped, I think, 2 years ago, something like that.
Oh, that's fair enough.
They are 1-0 down to Mr. Europa in Sevilla.
Yeah.
You won't get a more experienced Europa machine than Sevilla.
Yeah.
But I would say that Sevilla are very patchy at best when it comes to playing big games. I know they've won the Europa League, but they're, especially away from home, their form isn't always the best. And I think West Ham will want it, but I think they just lack that clinical.
I think West Ham have a chance of getting through, but if you want to avoid a team in Europa, it's probably Sevilla just based on their track record. It's like facing Real Madrid in the Champions League.
Yeah,
They're the ones who win it.
Yeah, and look, 1-0 West Ham with the atmosphere. They'll absolutely fancy themselves. But I think Sevilla in that tie just will have. I think experience is a factor, and I think they'll just about probably get through with a draw on the night or something close like that.
Yeah. Right, back to top four. Who's going to get top four then? Reece, since you're not saying Arsenal, are you picking United or are you going Spurs?
I'm going to say United. I'll give you my top four now. I'm going to go City, Liverpool, Chelsea, United, which is 3 out of the 4 in order, I think, that I originally had at the start of the season. I had City, United, Chelsea, Liverpool. So
okay. Not bad. Jordan?
I think, yeah, the top three, I hope we get a brilliant last minute title race. And just a quick point on that. A lot of Liverpool fans have been dreaming of the noticeable last day fixture of Man City versus Villa. Now, if football was a story or a Hollywood movie, you'd probably see a Coutinho and Gerrard, win on the last day to win Liverpool the title. Deep down, I probably hope that doesn't happen, but I'm going to stick with my guns and say City, I think, will just edge it. Liverpool, again, the gap now, a little bit too big for us to overcome. I think Chilwell and Reece James, that lack of, has really cost us the title race. In terms of, third, I think we've got locked up pretty safely. And of course, fourth, for me, I do think Arsenal, with the momentum, with the games in hand, I think we'll just get above United, and that'll be a massive win for Arteta.
Okay, fair. So I think we're all in agreement then. City to win the league. Liverpool second, Chelsea third. And I think it's just you, Reece, who's not putting Arsenal fourth.
The Arsenal fan himself.
Yeah.
It's not negativity, it's just general logic. It's just not, I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. But that's okay. Like, if they finish fifth, that's an amazing achievement. If he gets fourth, he's manager of the season. Whether people like to admit that or not. Like, considering the criticism he's had and how he started, he's improved that team massively. I can't think of a single bad player in that team at this moment in time. They're clicking well, but I just don't think there's enough experience or that, it's hard to say, but maybe that quality to just get them over that edge.
Fair enough. Right, to the main topic that's been taken over the last week, 2 weeks, and it's been dear to Jordan. Abramovich selling the club. Now it's obviously being a bit forced with the whole political side of things. So what's your take on it, Jordan? Give us everything you want to say about it.
I've got a lot. How long we got left? I mean, it's been a crazy, turbulent, I don't want to use the word exciting, maybe depressing few weeks as a Chelsea fan. Obviously, I've got to be realistic. I've been quite fortunate, since my first game at 6. We've had a very successful last 20 or so years under Roman. I think it almost feels, although it's not the way anyone would have wanted it to end, I think it's almost poetic that after we finally completed with obviously the Club World Cup, completing that full circle of officially winning every trophy there is to win, it feels almost poetic that as soon as straight after that, he's kind of forced to sell and the journey's looking like it's over. So it's sad, but we've got to be realistic. Can winning Champions Leagues and success last forever? I hope so, but we'll have to see kind of what owners take over. I think there's been a few rumours this week. Potential Saudi group for kind of 2.7 billion. There's talks of
and
Nick
then
Candy.
Americans, weren't it? Yeah,
a few Americans. So there's a lot of options. Obviously, all I can hope for as a Chelsea fan is that the situation gets resolved, and it feels like at the minute the players, the staff, the managers and coaches are the ones suffering, which I don't personally agree with. I think, yes, Roman should have the sanctions and he should be the one kind of losing out, whether it be financially. do I think the fans and, you know, not being able to sell tickets and so on, I think ultimately, you know, the government or whoever is punishing the wrong people. You know, a prime example of today, you know, the massive talking point today, you know, our initial proposal to say that the Middlesbrough game should be behind closed doors. Obviously, you know, as a Chelsea fan, I have to say, I think that proposal is completely ridiculous. I don't think any Chelsea fan wants to see that at all. And I believe they have since kind of loosely retracted that statement, which is good. For me, I briefly mentioned it earlier, the obvious solution here, obviously let the Middlesbrough fans in, sell the allocated amount of away team tickets to Chelsea fans, but simply give the ticket money raised either to Middlesbrough for doing so well in the Cup, or even better, you know, a charity that helps the victims of Ukraine or something along those lines. I think that's win-win for everyone. There's no integrity issues, but ultimately it's not the fans and the players and the staff who could be out of jobs. They're not the ones who should be suffering. So I think there's it almost feels the incentives are a bit wrong at the minute, and the government maybe is taking it out possibly unfairly.
I feel like obviously in Chelsea fan situation, it's sad to see if you just think about it for your own club, for myself, people who go to away days. So I found out with the Middlesbrough game, 500 to 600 tickets have been sold to Chelsea fans, but that was before the sanctions came in.
Okay.
So there's an extra, I think it's either 2,000 or 2,500, something like that, tickets that have been unsold because Chelsea aren't allowed to.
Yeah.
I do agree. I think the proposal by Chelsea was ridiculous, considering one, you also get your own home fans anyway to the games.
Yeah. There's still a home advantage. Yeah.
But there's sort of there's still the home advantage with Middlesbrough, but you can't say, because their reply can easily be, well, you get no home fans to the home games for Chelsea.
Yeah.
Which would be then even more suffering for the fans.
Yeah.
It is a bit of a sad sight to see for Chelsea. I know loads of people are going to sort of be joyous about it because it should benefit other clubs, or they just don't like Chelsea.
Yeah.
But when you've got the likes of Carragher and Neville saying their things last night, where they were talking about different owners of the clubs and how they shouldn't be with all the sports washing they're talking about, I think it's a bit hypocritical of them, because they're obviously talking from two clubs that haven't benefited from it and have actually, it's gone against them. Because Neville exactly with United, and they're United are still spending the money, but they're going down in terms of
and it feels like, you know, particularly the Carragher comments, I know has certainly rolled up sort of Chelsea Twitter and united the fan base, but the comments of Carragher, I think they're coming from a position where, well, Carragher himself, you know, isn't particularly the kind of moral compass for anyone, but, you know, they're coming from clubs of backgrounds who have had, you know, historical success, and they almost feel entitled that, you know, only Liverpool and maybe Man United, you know, they're entitled to success and privilege in signing players. And maybe the balance, you know, with City, with Chelsea and other clubs, the balance has, you know, been upset a little bit. And I think maybe there's a bit of bitterness there, but ultimately you want a bit of unbiased commentary. But at moments like this, you do kind of see potentially the kind of Liverpool and United true colours come out a little bit, which ultimately isn't good for anyone.
Reece, what's your take of the Chelsea situation so far?
Balance of both, really. I mean, I think you know, it's taken till now to start looking at ownership models, when this should have been addressed when he first took over. We all know, you know, football's influence getting Putin in power, but that's another story for another day. But I also understand the point of, fans, etc., are suffering. But also, when you say about the whole sports washing thing, it's made the league more competitive. I know the money's not exactly come from innocent sources, but if them investments hadn't happened, it would have just been United. And it'd probably still be United and probably Liverpool to this day, maybe even Arsenal flirting around there. So it's made the league more competitive. But of course, the ownership model thing should have been looked at 20 years ago.
Yeah. Where do you start? You know, they'll be knocking on Newcastle's door next, and maybe City's, you know, where does it end? You know, football oftentimes, and particularly in the last few weeks, football has almost become a bit of a political pawn. And fundamentally, us as fans, lifelong fans, we shouldn't be worrying about politics. All we should end up doing is going, on Saturday every week to support our club, and we want the best for our club. We shouldn't have to be having political debates. And hopefully the situation for everyone gets resolved. I'm sure rival fans in the meantime will obviously enjoy the various memes and stories of Chelsea being taken over. But from my side and Chelsea fans' side, we can only hope that maybe the rich Saudis come in and we end up with a richer owner. I think that would be a kind of ironic twist on the story in the end.
Right then, I think we're coming to a time where we end our episode. So thank you for listening, and I hope again you'll tune in next week.
Like, comment, and
Thank you.
subscribe. You know the drill.